Charlottesville, Virginia, the home of America's third president, the state's flagship university, and ground zero of the Confederate monument debate.
You will not replace us! You will not replace us!
Last year, white supremacists descended on the city of Charlottesville to protest the potential removal of Confederate monuments that honor Generals Robert E. Lee and Stonewall Jackson. That Unite the Right rally turned into a violent clash between white nationalists and counter-protesters, resulting in dozens of injuries and 3 deaths. A year later, the debate around these statues rages on throughout the country, and especially in Charlottesville. How do you look at this statue? How do you look at
It's a symbol of white supremacy. It's a symbol of white supremacy.
Jelaine Schmidt is the co-founder of the Black Lives Matter chapter in Charlottesville. She's been calling for the removal of these statues for more than 2 years, ever since several hundred people signed a Change.org petition calling for the statues to be taken down. So if you went all these years with it being here, why change it now?
Well, this is always the case for social change. I mean, you know, why are you complaining, Dr. King, about segregated restaurants? It's like we've always been fine with it. I mean, this is always the counter-argument that's made against social change movements.
The city of Charlottesville held several hearings in 2016 so citizens could voice their support or opposition to removing the statues.
You know, what we learned, you know, in you know, having more opponents of the statues attend these meetings, these hearings that were held in 2016, is that there were a lot of people that had the kind of passive opinion that they didn't like them. But there just hadn't been a venue to express that, a movement and this sort of thing. But once there was a forum for expressing this with the Blue Ribbon Commission, people showed up and they spoke their mind.
From North Carolina to New Orleans and across the country, Confederate monuments are being debated, fought for, and taken down. Since the Charleston church shooting in 2015, 113 Confederate symbols have been taken down, while more than 1,700 still stand. The state of Virginia has more than 220 publicly displayed symbols and monuments to the Confederacy, including Richmond's famous Monument Avenue. Charlottesville's downtown square centers around 2 statues in particular, Confederate Generals Robert E. Lee and Stonewall Jackson.
When you start talking about removing statues or removing public figures, that what you are doing is starting to move into Orwellian territory.
Lewis Martin is a Charlottesvillian through and through. He's lived here his entire life. He went to the University of Virginia, and his family has been in the area for at least 100 years.
My grandparents would have been in this park at the time that the statue was dedicated back in 1924.
He's also a preservationist who has been lobbying to keep these statues standing in Charlottesville since the issue first arose 2 years ago.
Back in those days, I think that probably all white people would be considered to have what we consider in this day and age white supremacist views, but I don't think that that's a reason to tear down what those people put up. Presentism is when you apply 21st century mores to historical figures of another era.
There's no validity to the presentism argument, and I've heard Lewis Martin raise that argument countless times.
Ben Doherty works at UVA's law school and is an activist in the city with an organization called SURGE, or Showing Up for Racial Justice.
There were thousands and thousands of people during slavery times who knew it was wrong. That argument, that presentism argument, is ignoring all of those people. You cannot say that that population, that 52% of the population, did not think that slavery was wrong.
Doherty was in the streets protesting on August 12th. Him and his wife were just yards away when James Field Jr. drove his car into the crowd of peaceful protesters.
And that was just chaos. And I saw the first car in line, you know, a perfectly innocent car, just go projecting out into the intersection with somebody just splayed over the windshield. And so I was seeing this, but my mind was not processing what was happening because I couldn't imagine, you know, that somebody would actually just run over a crowd of peaceful protesters.
Doherty and Schmidt say what happened in Charlottesville last year is part of the reason why removing these statues is so important. And it's no coincidence that white nationalists chose Charlottesville for their rally.
You know, the fact that white supremacists, multiple groups of white supremacists chose Charlottesville last summer for their demonstrations, to me should not surprise anybody. And Charlottesville has been a center of white supremacist thinking for hundreds of years.
As this was being erected, right, and also the General Lee statue just down the block was being erected in the 1920s, this is when the local Ku Klux Klan chapter was established here. And the inaugural ceremony that took place just a few months before this statue was put in was in June 1921 at none other than Jefferson's Monticello. They literally went to Jefferson's tomb to have their first cross-burning ceremony there.
Since removing Confederate statues from public places became a national issue, many have come to the defense of these monuments. But white supremacists and the so-called alt-right have made it a point to rally around these symbols across the country.
I look to Nazi Germany. You look at what Hitler did. He co-opted many traditional German symbols to incorporate them into his Nazi worldview. That was taking something that there was nothing wrong with and perverting it. And I think that that's exactly what these white supremacists have done.
The thing about symbols is that people rally around them. People are mobilized with them. The problem with symbols is that people are willing to die for them and even kill for them, as we saw this summer. So yeah, it's important to, you know, that our civic spaces you know, have symbols that represent our common values.